Welcome to Skytech-Lens. The year 2025 marked a seismic shift in the Canada-US relationship. For generations, we shared more than a border. We shared values, economies, and a common destiny. But that summer, the US administration under President Trump stunned Ottawa by demanding direct American oversight of Canada's sovereign ports. This wasn't about joint security or cooperation. It was a demand to control the gateways to Canada's global trade. The US wanted to dictate what goods entered and left Canada, and with whom we could do business. For Canada, whose prosperity depends on open trade, this was an existential threat. Prime Minister Mark Carney faced a stark choice: submit to US demands or chart a new independent course. The demand was the culmination of years of escalating trade tensions and aggressive US tariffs. But this move went beyond economics. It was a strategic play to subordinate Canada's infrastructure to American interests. Ottawa's response was swift and unequivocal: no. This quiet defiance set the stage for a dramatic reshaping of North American trade. The old assumptions of partnership were about to be rewritten. President Trump's main tool was the tariff, used not just for economics, but as a hammer to force compliance. Canada, deeply tied to the US, became a prime target. Tariffs on steel and aluminum soared, threatening thousands of Canadian jobs and raising costs for US manufacturers. The campaign soon expanded to cars, energy, and critical minerals, each new tariff a calculated blow. The most cynical move came in August 2025. New tariffs justified by blaming Canada for fentanyl, despite US data showing almost none came from the north. The real goal, to weaken Canada until US control over our ports, seemed like a lifeline. But this strategy backfired. Instead of compliance, it forged a new Canadian resolve. The tariff hammer exposed our over-reliance on the US and galvanized support for economic independence. Rather than break our will, it steeled it. Canada was ready to chart its own path. Under immense pressure, Canada's response was quiet but unshakable. Prime Minister Carney made it clear this was about sovereignty, not just trade. The refusal to cede control became the foundation of a new Canadian policy. In Berlin, Carney signed landmark deals with Germany and Latvia for Canadian LNG and minerals, sending a message: Canada has other friends and markets. This public defiance inspired other nations to resist US pressure. Back home, Carney launched a $500 billion infrastructure plan to build independent trade corridors to the Atlantic and Pacific. The goal: bypass US bottlenecks and open Canada to the world. This was about more than economics. It was about national identity. Canada was no longer a junior partner, but a G7 nation determined to chart its own course. Vision needs a framework. Enter Bill C-5, a transformative law powering Canada's pivot to trade sovereignty. Bill C-5 streamlines and fast-tracks critical infrastructure, giving Ottawa authority to designate and fund projects of national importance. It cuts through red tape, ensuring port and rail upgrades move from aspiration to reality. The law attracts international investment by creating a stable, predictable environment for global partners. Bill C-5 also safeguards Canadian infrastructure from foreign control, a direct rebuke to US demands. It enshrines the principle that Canadian trade serves Canadian interests first. This is the legal backbone of our new reality. Sovereignty is now written in law, steel, and concrete. With Bill C-5 in place, Canada launched its most ambitious infrastructure campaign ever. The goal: create efficient, independent gateways on 3 oceans, turning geography into economic strength. In the east, Montreal's Contrecoeur terminal is being transformed into a megaport, offering Europe direct access to North America, bypassing US ports. In the north, the Port of Churchill is reborn as an Arctic gateway, shipping LNG and minerals to Europe via the shortest sea route. Out west, Vancouver and Prince Rupert are expanding to handle surging Pacific trade, offering faster, more reliable access than US West Coast ports. These projects are more than upgrades. They're conduits for a new, independent Canadian economy. Canada is now positioned as a global trade hub. Our ports are open to the world, not just to our southern neighbor. A new era of commerce has begun. Canada's pivot wasn't just about ports, it was about new partnerships. The government launched a global push to diversify trade and reduce dependence on the US. Europe, eager for stable energy and minerals, welcomed Canada's overtures. Deals with Germany, Latvia, and others made Canada a strategic partner of choice. Across the Pacific, Japan and South Korea saw Canada as a reliable supplier and gateway to North America. Even China took note, seeking direct access to Canadian resources. Canada's independence made it a sought-after player on the world stage. the world now sees Canada as a power in its own right. America's tariff architects never expected Canada's pivot to hurt the US economy, but as trade routes shifted north, US industries felt the pain. Mining towns lost contracts as buyers turned to Canada's efficient ports. The auto sector faced shortages of critical minerals now flowing through Canadian channels. US ports and dock workers saw jobs vanish as cargo ships rerouted to Montreal and Vancouver. Trucking and logistics suffered as cross-border freight declined. The strategy meant to bring jobs home ended up exporting opportunity north. The cost of isolation was real and rising. The pain spread to American families. Rerouted supply chains and persistent tariffs created scarcity and inflation. Retailers warned of empty shelves and unpredictable inventory. Everyday goods, from electronics to groceries, became more expensive as shipping grew longer and costlier. The cost of living soared, with new cars and homes especially hard hit. The trade war, meant to protect Americans, ended up isolating them from global commerce. The price of isolation was paid at the checkout counter. The 2025 trade conflict did more than raise prices. It redrew the geopolitical map. America's attempt to strong-arm Canada backfired, creating a new independent northern gateway. The world took notice. US leverage was eroding. Allies in Europe and Asia saw they could partner directly with Canada, bypassing US unpredictability. The image of Canada signing deals in Berlin symbolized a new, multipolar reality. For Canadians, it meant a resilient, diversified economy and renewed pride. For Americans, it meant higher costs and waning influence. The old senior-junior partnership was gone. The lesson in a connected world, cooperation, not coercion, is true strength. Canada's new doors to the world left the architect of isolation increasingly alone. Thanks for watching. Subscribe the channel for more updates.